Just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. Just to keep things clear and focused, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'll be switching between the presentation and a live demonstration. To reduce any visual noise, I'll turn off my camera once we get into Acumatica. I tend to do it with my hands, so I figured why not avoid having that additional distraction. All right. So today we're going to go ahead and cover a few hot topics. We're going to start with the introduction to project budgeting. This is going to set the stage to why it's so important for you to have control of your financial information on your projects. Next, we'll dive into configuring your revenue and cost budgets, discussing how to plan for expected revenue and job costs. After that, we'll discuss a few of the budget control features that Acumatica has, and that can help prevent overspending and enforce the change order workflow. And who doesn't love a good paper trail? Following that, we will review a few ways to track the actual versus budgeted costs, which will help you stay on top of those in real time. And then after that, we'll discuss revising budgets because we know that things don't go as expected, especially in the construction industry. So we'll kind of talk through when to do it and how to do it and how that looks on your project. And before we wrap up with the summary and Q&A, we will take a look at the various Acumatica tools that we can evaluate our project performance, and that can help you guys make better informed decisions. Great. So let's kick things off by talking about the importance of project budgeting in the construction industry. First and foremost, effective budget management is critical for any project. Construction has a lot of moving pieces. There's accelerated timelines. There's unexpected costs. So having a good breakdown of those costs can help prevent your project from spiraling. In Acumatica, there are two key components that come into play. The first component is the revenue budget. This is all about forecasting your project income. It's where you're going to track your revenue you expect to earn from the project, broken down by project tasks or activities. The other component is the cost budget. This focuses on your expenses. Here, we're going to track things like your projected costs, such as labor, material, subcontractor expenses. The goal is to stay on top of that and avoid budget overruns. By setting these up, you can gain control over your project. And some of the key benefits include cost efficiency and financial control is a big one. And then it can also improve forecasting. A well-managed budget allows for more accurate forecasting, which is essential for long-term planning. Before we get into configuring the revenue and cost budgets, let's talk about the project tasks. So properly setting up your project tasks is a critical step in managing your projects. First, project tasks are required for every single transaction. So that means if you don't have a project task, that means no transaction. And that includes transactions, time, materials, expenses, purchasing materials. So you want to make sure that you have that structure set up. And outside of that technical aspect, defining the project task can also properly help you, or it also helps determine the quality of information you're going to get out of the system. If we don't have a clear structure, we're going to get unreliable data, which is kind of like the saying that says garbage in, garbage out. This is why I really like to work closely with the clients that I work with to fully understand their business needs and make sure that they not only have the information on what they can do in the system, but also like how that's going to work. Customers don't typically know, they don't know what they don't know. So they really rely on us as their partner to kind of fill in those gaps. And sometimes their goals or their wants or wishes are, there's a lot more involved than they really thought. So kind of working together with that and with your client and just having a common goal for success and being able to get their wants and needs, but not setting it up where you're making it difficult down the road. So some of that information includes letting them know that, how it impacts your budget. By setting up a clearly defined project task structure, you can actually take a look at what kind of cost you have, what kind of income you're going to have, and break it down into things that are going to work for your business needs. It also can help with making your budget adjustments easier. And so when you do that, you can actually, make these adjustments ad hoc without really impacting the overall project flow. And it'll also give you better insights. It's going to give you information in terms of like what tasks are profitable, which ones are constantly running over budget, and things that, can kind of indicate where you're going to need to make an adjustment. By taking the time to define your project tasks upfront, you're going to really set yourself up for success. It lays the foundation for better project control. With all that said, let's dive into Acumatica and I'll walk you through the project and task setup and getting us ready to configure the revenue and cost budgets. Right. So now that we're in Acumatica, we're going to navigate to the construction workspace, and I'm going to go ahead and just click the new project tile up here. It's going to take us directly to a new project where we can start. Once it's loaded, I'm going to go ahead and specify a project ID. This can also be auto-numbered depending on your business needs. So I'm going to go ahead and use my numbering sequence here that I had. I'm also going to go ahead and specify the customer, and we'll use Allen Bakery. Thing I like to do is I like to leverage templates. This can help bring in some default values for information that is required to save that may not be that doesn't change from project to project. And some of those things include, it could set up your budget properties, it can default your change order workflow, and especially things that are required like your billing period and your billing rules and things like that. So I am going to go ahead and use the one that I created for the webinar. And then I'm going to go ahead and update the description to just say the Allen Bakery project, just so that we can easily see that this is the project information instead of the template name. We've saved this. I want to kind of talk about a little bit more about the template that I brought in. So in the template, I actually specified some tasks to help streamline creating this project once we were ready. So I'm going to go ahead and pop over to the task tab, and we're actually going to revisit the project properties here once we start talking about the revenue and cost budgets. So on the task tab, I already pre-populated with the task that we're going to use. Given that we're talking about the construction industry, I structured the setup to align with the Construction Specification Institute, also known as the CSI codes. In this case, I wanted to break down my project tasks by division. So here we have general requirements, site construction, and finishes. All these tasks are set up as both revenue and cost, meaning I can use these tasks on both my revenue and my cost budgets. By organizing the project this way, we're setting up the structure that's easy to manage and monitor financially. Each task is going to align with a different division within the project. And here's an important tip. Don't forget to activate the task. It's a simple step that's easy to miss, but ensures that everything runs smoothly. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that we've covered how to set up the project and how important project tasks are, let's return to the slides to go over the configuring our budgets. And that's just pulling up now. All right, now that we're back in the deck, let's talk about these revenue and cost budgets. These budgets are crucial for keeping your budgets on track, or your projects on track, ensuring that you're going to stay within scope or identify those overruns quickly. Acumatica makes setting up your budgets pretty straightforward. You'll start by defining the budget level options for both the revenue and cost budgets on the summary tab, which I'll be demonstrating shortly. There are 4 budget level combinations to choose from, allowing you to customize your budget structure based on your project needs. So option 1 is task only. This is great for high level tracking if you want a budget at a broad project task level. Then you have option 2, which is task and cost code. This is ideal if you need to break down costs by specific activities or phases, leveraging the cost code structure you set up. The third option is task and item. Choose this option when you want to specify specific material or resources that you want to use within the project. And then option 4 is task, item, and cost code. This is the most detailed level, allowing you to track your budget and costs at a more granular spec, considering the specific items and activities for those tasks. One best practice that I kind of always refer back to is for the smaller projects, I think using task and cost code are typically enough. I feel like for the larger, more complex projects, that's where I can see the task, item, and cost codes are more valuable because you'll be able to maximize your visibility. Now that we've talked about the two budgets we have, or now that we've talked about the budgets and the budget properties, let's talk about the actual revenue and cost budget. So the revenue budget in Acumatica is about tracking your anticipated income. It includes everything you expect to bill your client throughout the project's lifecycle. What's really great about this is it acts as your schedule values. For those of you familiar with with construction billing, you know this is a breakdown of contract values allocated to certain components, or in our case, tasks, which reflect how you intend to bill your client month over month. Now, depending on your needs, this revenue budget can also be utilized in the pro forma AIA billing reports that Acumatica actually produces. This is a game changer for streamlining project billing, and I can say from my firsthand experience, using the AIA report in Acumatica significantly reduced the time I spent on my billing. Now, the cost budget in Acumatica is all about tracking and managing your project expenses. So whether that's labor, materials, subcontractors, or other project-related costs, this budget helps project managers effectively plan their resources and monitor their progress. Having a clear and detailed cost budget from the start ensures that your project remains financially viable and minimizes the risk for unexpected cost overruns. This proactive approach provides project managers with the information they need to make informed decisions and keep that project on track. Now that we've covered the different budget levels and best practices, let's switch back to the demo so I can show you how we can set this up in Acumatica. We'll take a look at the summary tab, and then I'll walk through setting up our budgets in real time. All right, so we're going to start here on the summary tab of the project form, and then this is where we would define our budget levels. For this example and the project that I have, we're actually going to use two different budget levels. I'm going to start with the revenue budget, and here we're just going to kind of keep it simple, and we're going to do task only. This allows us to track our expected revenue against these high level project tasks. It's also going to work for as my SOV, like I said, and then we'll be able to use it on our billing reports. So now that that's saved, I'm going to go ahead and actually move over to the revenue budget and create that with you. So I am going to go ahead and specify my project task, and you can actually type this in or use the magnifying glass that I did here. I'm going to use division 1 and specify my account group. And then I'm going to go ahead and specify the dollar amounts that I have. So I have 15,000 here, and I want for division 2, I am going to go ahead and specify another 50,000 for site construction. And then lastly, we'll finish off with the finishes. And I'm going to go ahead and just specify 33,000. One thing that I like to do is leverage this group by task checkbox up here. What this does is that it essentially totals up all the line items by task. So if we had a breakdown structure or a more granular structure here, it would combine them by the task and give you a total number here. I like to do this, especially because I know not everybody starts at the project quote level. So if you're starting the process right at the project level, it allows you to kind of quickly reconcile against what your contract documents say to ensure you're entering it into Acumatica properly, and not making any mistakes or typos. Let's toggle back to the summary tab and take a look at the cost budget level. For this one, we're going to use task and cost code. And this is going to give us a little bit more, a little bit more details by letting us track not just by the task, but also the cost category. So given that we're going to use the project task as the division, like general requirements or site construction, the cost code is going to be a subcategory that's going to break those divisions into more specific activities. That could include permits, site preparations, and things like drywall. These cost codes can be a combination of material costs as well as labor or even subcontractor costs, right? So this is where that account group comes into play. We'll leverage the different account groups that we have set up. We have our labor account group, a material account group, and this is going to give us the flexibility to add multiple lines per task and cost code combination. We are also going to track quantities and unit cost here. Including all these aspects can help us understand the breakdown of the costs in details, whether it's labor hours, material quantities, or just subcontractor charges. It gives us better control and visibility into where the project's money is going. Now let's go ahead and set up the cost budget. Typically, the cost budget, just from what I've seen, is a lot more detailed than the revenue budget. So in preparation for this, I figured why not show the load from records functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and bring in my cost budget from Excel. All right, it's already mapped properly, so we're not going to need to make any changes. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK here. And now we brought all of our costs in. So what I would do now is I would save it and then essentially group it by task again, similar to what we did on the revenue budget. Take a look at these totals and compare it against my source document. Typically, when you upload it, you're not really expecting errors, but I tend to check and triple check. One thing I do want to point out, since we are talking about quantities and unit of measures here, is that if you do want your actual quantities to populate to your cost budget, you're going to want to make sure that you do define a unit of measure at the cost budget level. And that unit of measure is also on any of those project transactions that are created. They don't necessarily need to be the same, but if you wanted to populate, you will need a conversion on the item level to convert it from what's on the budget to what's on the transaction or vice versa. If you don't, then you're not going to see the actual quantities. And before we get back to the slides, I want to actually also highlight the project balances tab. We're going to revisit this tab quite a few times throughout the demo, but here is just another way where you can look at your total balances that you put in the system. Again, just for, triple checking, I guess. That's the third time I'm checking now. So, you can come in here and check the original budget amounts and take a look at these dollar amounts here and compare it against your information. The difference between this tab and the revenue and cost budget is this tab actually groups it by account group. So you're going to see it by your labor, material, other, and subcontractor expenses. This can vary from organization to organization. I've seen quite a whole bunch of different account group structures, but this is the one that we're going to use today. I feel like it's kind of like the most straightforward, streamlined way to see that information. And then one more thing that I want to point out, but we're not really going to dive much into the details about it, but if you do want to use an account group with the asset or liability type, so your account group is the type when you select it on the drop down is asset or liability, that's actually not going to show up on your revenue or cost budgets. If you take a look, all we have when we click into the account group here is revenue. We wouldn't see the asset account, and same vice versa or with the cost budget. If we drill into the cost budget here and click into it, we're also only going to see expense type account groups. Now, if you do have transactions and account groups with GL accounts in there with asset and liability accounts, you may see them on the balances tab. one thing that comes into mind is like unrecognized revenue or unbilled revenue. Those are ones, or project WIP. Those are things that I've seen on here, and they will show up on the balances tab, but you will not see that reflected on the revenue and cost budget. Now that we've talked about how to set up the budget, we're going to go ahead and activate the project and switch back to the deck to kind of take a look at what budget control options we have. Okay. All right. So talking about budget functions, um, I think these budget controls are severely underrated functionalities that are not used as often as I personally feel like they should. So I really wanted to highlight that in this demonstration. So the two controls that I really like are lock budget and budget control warnings um, which is for certain documents. So by locking the budget, the original budgeted quantities and amounts can serve as a baseline. And once the budget is locked, any changes will require users to follow the change order workflow. And then this is going to ensure that any adjustments are properly tracked and approved, if you have the approval map. And then it's also going to help you maintain that control to avoid unexpected surprises. The second functionality that we will discuss is the budget control on document entry option. This is defined globally, and the setting can be found in the project preferences screen. By default, the budget control is do not control. So this is something you would need to manually update. When you switch it to show a warning, this functionality will show a warning similar to what we're seeing on the screen here. And again, so it's just a warning. It's going to give you some information about what's budgeted, what's been consumed and available, and what's remaining. It's important to note that it's not going to prevent you from processing the document, but it will serve as a helpful alert when entering and or approving those project expenses. This way, the team is made aware of potential budget overruns and, kind of try to rectify that ahead of time. So the budget control warning, I mentioned that it only appears on certain documents. And so those documents include normal and project dropship orders, AP bills that are on the on hold or balance, as well as pending approval status, change orders on the on hold or pending approval status, and lastly, subcontracts with the on hold and pending approval status. This warning message appears on the document line, but I've noticed in the newer versions that there's also a warning on the header level, which once we get back into Acumatica, I'm going to show you guys. But it's really only going to correspond to the specific line, right? It's going to say this line's out of, this is going to make you go out of budget. Even if you have more than one line on that project, it's going to individually specify that for each line. So these controls give us the flexibility to be just more proactive when we're managing our project finances. So let me switch back to the demo and we'll take a look at how we can set these controls up. All right, so I'm going to start with the lock budget functionality. Want to highlight here, so this is kind of what I was talking about. Oh, this did not show up. Go back to on project. So here we have the project. I wanted to highlight that when the budget is unlocked or you haven't taken the steps to lock it, these original budget amounts, the rate and original quantities, all of these things are editable fields on both the revenue and the cost budget. But once I lock it, it'll become uneditable. So to lock it, you can click the three dots here and scroll down to the budget operations and click lock budget. One thing you could also do is click this little star to the left of the option. And by doing this, it'll add it to the toolbar here, which makes it easier to click. It's, right there, in your face, and you can actually just, come in here and click it. So I'm going to go ahead and click and show you guys what that looks like now. So now that the budget's locked, there isn't really necessarily an indicator visually that it's locked, but you'll come in here and you'll notice that now these specific lines that I added are no longer editable. And depending on your project controls, you can set it up where only certain people can unlock the budget. Or, if we do need to make adjustments, that's done through the change order workflow. The other functionality we discussed was the budget control. So let's go navigate to the project preferences screen and update that budget control um, setting. So if you go to construction, your construction workspace, um, over here on the right, we have project preferences. I'm actually going to open this in a new tab so that we don't lose where we're at. And let's go ahead and get that up. And so looking at the project preferences screen, we see that here, it's really towards the bottom where it says budget control. Again, by default, it's do not control. We're going to switch it over to show a warning. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and enter a bill with the a overage. So let me get that up and I will pull it up to you guys. Get that in here. Oh, there we go. All right. So let me get my bill. And the session says it's expired. So let's get that updated. All right. So this is what we are expecting it to look like. Bringing it over now. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And so when I entered this bill, I had created it for East Orange office, just, kind of permits for construction projects. And we can see here, I have my project task, or my project ID, my task, cost code, and I use an inventory ID to help default some of the values, such as the account, GL account information. But this is the warning I was talking about at the header level. I was like, the project budget is exceeded. So this now tells you to go look at the line level. So we only have one line. So let's hover over this. This is very similar to that screenshot that we had in the presentation. Trying to get my mouse over, but here it'll tell you what we have as budgeted, what's been consumed. This amount is 0 currently because we haven't actually released any transactions against this line before. The available amount, what this document amount is going to turn it into, and then what's remaining. So essentially the variance, right? We are going to we're going to still go ahead and release this transaction because it, is going to be a valid expense. But before we do that, one thing I like to say is, in the event that you do have, you know, budgets that have exceeded in like cases like this, I really do find it helpful that adding notes at the time of entry is a helpful way, just that so when you go back to that information, weeks or months down the road, you're not trying to remember why this went over budget. So I actually put a note in here at the line level, which just said there was an additional cost for a rush fee to get this permit ASAP. This is at the line level, given that these overruns or these warnings are at the line level. However, in cases like this where you only have one line, you can also leverage the note option at the document level. Either one works, but I feel like it just it helps. Like I said, it helps for information and it helps when you kind of do your project reviews and taking a look at why things were over budget. So for this, we are going to go ahead and release it, and we're going to take a look at the project screen to see how that was affected. All right, so now that it's released, let's go ahead and move back to the project. So I'm going to go ahead and close both of these tabs. So we have the project. Since I haven't refreshed my screen, right now nothing looks like it's been affected. So I'm actually going to go ahead and use this cancel option. By doing this, it'll leave me at the cost budget window, so then I don't have to kind of move back. If you refresh your browser, it defaults back to the summary tab. Either way is fine, but I prefer the cancel option. So now that we have, like, essentially refreshed our project, we can see that the actual expenses have come in. So right up here, high level, very quickly, we can see actual expense 400. This corresponds directly to the bill I just released. And now looking at the cost budget level, at this first line, we see those same details that we kind of saw in the warning, right? We saw our revised budget amount, our actual amount, our variance. And then, this will this concept will apply for all transactions as they release in the system. And then the other thing I wanted to kind of going back to the balance tab, one of many more times, is you can also see it at the account group level, right? So you can take a look at, instead of my task by, hey, I want to know how many expenses we had for general requirements, I want to know how much did we spend on other project related expenses. So on the balances tab, it kind of gives you that information. So now we can see we have that $400 in the other project expenses row. I think functionalities like these are just ways that you can monitor and control your project budget throughout the life cycle. And I find them really helpful just as you manage the project and um, try to maintain control of those costs. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the slide deck to talk about the different ways that we can track our budgets. All right, let me get that up. All right, so tracking budgets in Acumatica. There's a few ways. Some of them we've already kind of talked about many times, and some of them we haven't actually really touched on. So the two that we've already talked about, balances tab, we just kind of looked at how we could see it, by account group, and then on the cost budget where you can see it more at the line level. Then you also have Acumatica also has a performance percentage, which essentially is a system calculated um, column or field that will give you the value of your consumed budget amount. Um, However, keep in mind that just because you consumed it doesn't mean that it's actually that percent complete. So, by looking at how much is consumed and then, talking to your field staff, that can help kind of, you know, identify those discrepancies early. There's a few other reports, or sorry, a few other inquiries that Acumatica also has that I think are extremely helpful when you're just trying to track your budget, review those expenses. One of them is the budget details inquiry. This kind of gives you more information, or it kind of gives you the same information you see on the project, but now you can see it by multiple projects, or you can also leverage the parameters by just putting that one project in there. It also kind of breaks it down into different tabs where you can see all of your budgeted items, your budget details, and then there's also additional tasks or tabs for your revenue and your expense accounts. And then the project transaction detail inquiry allows you to drill into specific transactions. And this is really good to kind of help trace back any variances, or just kind of, if you want to get a better understanding of your cost. So I'm going to go ahead and move back into Acumatica. But before we could do that, I'm going to go ahead and release those expenses so then we have something that we can actually track. So let me go ahead and get that updated, and we will, I'll get that logged in. So let me go ahead and update or share my screen. So I have this labor project transaction. I just need to update the project to be our project 4. So this is just me kind of importing some labor transactions that will take a look at the project. And then I also have a inventory material issue that we're just releasing from general inventory. Again, just need to update the project information. And we're going to go ahead and release. And then lastly, I have one additional bill that I'd like to release for subcontractor expenses. So let's go ahead and pop in here, and we're just going to go ahead and release this one as well. Change that project, release. Oh, that's probably need to do that. That was under features. Yes. All right. All right, now let's move into the project. So navigating back to the construction workspace, we'll go ahead and open up the project profile, which is going to give us an inquiry of all of our projects. I'll toggle over to the Toad Green projects, which is specific to this branch. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up our project. Now, at a high level, we can see our expenses have significantly increased from the 400 that we previously had. So the first place we're going to take a look real quick is the balances tab. Here we have now additional information, in all of our account groups, right? We can see actual amounts in every single one. And then the performance percentage at this level is essentially just calculating the amount that you've consumed of that revised budget amount. So, we've consumed 14% of our labor. We've actually overconsumed, so we're over budget on our other project expenses, and we've consumed 53 overall. Overall, it says that we've consumed 31% of our actual budget. Now, looking at the cost budget here, very similar information, right? So we have it, but now we have it by the line level. So now we see it by our task and cost code instead of just the account group. So this gives us a more granular look into those specific actual amounts, and we can see, hey, actually we don't have anything in surveys, and actually we don't have anything in material drywall, right? So looking at it from a balances tab, lumping in material, you may be thinking there's additional material. So this just gives you more information. This column also, or the cost budget also has a performance column, similar, same calculation, same functionality. It is just meant to calculate the consumed amount. We talked about two other inquiries too. So just real quick, we'll talk about the budget details. So in the construction workspace, let's go ahead and click show all. And we're going to go ahead and find the budget details. Another quick tip, if you click the star, it'll add it to your favorites tab. And we can go in here and click budget details. And so, like I said, this is going to give you information, by default for all projects. You can come in here and specify the specific project that you want. So we're going to go ahead and do the one that we're working on. And here now we can see all of our records. We can see additional information. If we had inventory items on our project, you can also hide that field if it's not relevant, but just keep in mind that you may have one structure for one project and another structure for another. So here you can see it tells you the type, just high level information about your project budget. Then it also breaks it down by your income and expense accounts. I just found that this is useful just to kind of look at it at a high level. I feel like sometimes it's a lot easier to see it in inquiry form versus looking at it at the project level. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the project transaction details inquiry. So I'm going to go ahead and open the workspace up again and click project transaction details. And this is going to help you drill into those specific transactions. So we can come in here and specify the project. And then here it's just going to give me a detail of all the transactions, but as the project progresses, you're going to have, you may have hundreds and hundreds of lines. So it gives you the option to actually drill down even further, either by task or cost code, even item. Now, if we circle back to the project, you can actually look at that directly from the project as well. So moving into the cost budget, if you were to click into one of these lines, you can click view transactions, which essentially takes you to that project transaction details with those items predefined, right? You have or pre-filled. The other thing I want to mention is if you don't have any actual expenses, it may not actually pull up anything, and you're not going to see any records here. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and move back into Acumatica to talk about the infamous budget revisions. And since we've locked our budget, we're going to have to do this manually, or we're going to have to do this through the change order workflow. So let me get the PowerPoint back up. All right. All right, so now that we've seen how to track our budgets, it's time to talk about the revising the budget. So let's start with when we're going to need to make these revisions. And typically there's two main scenarios. Others may apply, but we'll talk about these two. So there's scope changes. This is if your scope expands, maybe even decreases, or there's an additional request, right? There's changes to it. And you need to update your budget to reflect these new requirements. The other scenario would be unexpected cost. And sometimes unforeseen expenses do come up, whether it's due to labor shortages or material damages. This adjusting your budget will help you stay accurate with your financial planning. And so now let's talk about how we're going to do this in Acumatica. So this is where the change orders come into play. Change orders are your formal agreement between you and your client, which is going to actually make the change to the budget. You can also set up approvals and set that up so it gets routed to the right people. But by doing it this way, it creates a clear audit trail. It's going to create that documentation that we're all looking for, that we all need and we want. And it's nice that you can do it directly in the system. You can do it through your mobile app, and there's multiple ways that you can actually leverage this information in Acumatica. Today, we're going to just talk about creating it directly through the change order form. And we're going to go ahead and move back over there and take a quick peek at how that's going to be reflected. All right. So now I'm on the change order screen. So I'm going to go ahead and specify the project. We're going to use Allen Bakery. And then I've already copied my description, but essentially the change order we're putting in is for accelerated schedule. The client is asking that we need additional staff, to get something done, and they need to come in for the weekend. So I put that as the description. The reason I did that is I wasn't actually tracking quantities on the revenue budget. So I wanted to leverage using the description. So in some capacity that, information was translated to the client when it went out for approval from them. So I'm going to go ahead and select the project task, and we'll go ahead and just use Division 2 for site construction. I'm going to go ahead and select revenue, and the dollar amount we're going to use is going to be $5,500. Here you're going to see what you've originally budgeted, and then what your revised budget could look like. And then this won't actually be reflected until the change order is released. I like to save as I go. So now I'm going to go ahead and move over to the cost budget. And you also have the select budget line option. So we're going to use that for this cost budget. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go ahead and select my Division 2 labor line, and I'm going to click Add and Close. This is also going to bring in the unit rate that I have on the project. So here we already know it's going to be 48 hours. So all I'm going to do is enter the quantity of 48 hours and let the system do the rest. So I'll go ahead and save it and we'll take a look. So here on the header level, we can see that high level information, so you don't have to switch back and forth between revenue and cost budget. You can see your total revenue change, your cost budget change, and also your margin. I feel like this is really helpful when it comes to determining what that change order value is going to be. Before we actually release this, I want to go ahead and show you what it's going to look like on the project. And you can actually use this pencil icon to open the project in a new window, so we don't have to go back and forth through the screens, since it's just going to be for view only. So I actually previously hid these tabs, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it back, and I'm going to bring the potential change order amount in here. Similarly, it would also be the same case for the cost budget, but for time purposes, I'm going to go ahead and just talk about the revenue. So here we see the potential change order amount, and our revised budget amount is still $50,000, same as our original. Once we release it, we'll see this amount go to 0, and this will increase to 55,000. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window again, take this off hold, and release it. And if we just go ahead and click this open again, coming back into the revenue budget, now we have a revised budgeted amount of $55,500. The budgeted amount change orders here, it's just going to total up all of your change orders. All right. So now, one of the last things before we get into the summary is we're going to talk about the different ways you can track your project balances and performances. So I'm going to switch back to the deck and we'll take a quick peek. Right, let me scoot over. We are getting to the tail end of this. Um, So here we go. So um, Acumatica has a few ways that we can actually review project balances and performances. This includes information that's available at the project level, which we've seen. We've seen the project balances, we've seen the cost budget, we've also seen the performance percentage, right? But there's a few that we haven't talked about. So one of my favorites is the project WIP report that can kind of give you some high level information about the performance versus actual percent complete, and then also can help with the determining your over and under billing amounts. There's also quite a few project dashboards. You know, you can see that screenshot on the screen here that kind of gives you high level information. And then I also wanted to share a inquiry that I've used in the past that can help kind of streamline that percent complete inquiry, and I can show you how that works. So I'm going to move back into Acumatica one last time, and we're going to look through these additional methods to track your performance, and then we'll close up with summary and Q&A if we have time. All right, so I am going to pop over to some of the dashboards. So on more items, we do have some dashboards here, and they are not showing up. So let me pull it up on my sales demo, my other environment, and I'll show you there. But before we get into that, I'm going to go ahead and just show you Project WIP. And I'm just going to run it as is here, just so that we can just kind of see high level globally for all projects. It is really nice. It's helped me a lot when I was an end user and I had to do the month end financial information manually. So here's a lot of information. It is probably small for you guys to see, but if you're familiar with the environment, you may have seen this before. But you have your contract amounts, you have your estimated cost, and then kind of scrolling over and through, you have your projected cost at completion, actual costs. So right now we only see the one for the project. And then right here, kind of my two favorite columns are your billing in excess of costs and your costs, your billing in excess of cost and your cost in excess of billing. And then this can help you make your month-end journal entries to kind of make sure you're recognizing your revenue properly. So the other inquiry that I wanted to show you is what is it called? The percent complete, the project percent complete. Let's take a look at my favorites. I believe I did that. So here, this project complete inquiry. So this is a read-only inquiry. So I want to make sure that we take a look at the project before we do that, and I can show you how to make those changes. So we talked a little bit earlier on about the performance percentage and how that can vary from your actual percentage complete. That number typically comes from your field staff, and you can't really always tell from your numbers alone, but you can tell if things are, going too well or not good enough, when the numbers are off too. So one thing that you're going to need to do to be able to use that inquiry and also make this change and track it is you're going to want to make sure you track production data. You check that on. And what this does, it actually adds a few more columns to the already long cost budget, all related to cost at completion. And the one that we're going to focus on is just going to be the percentage of completion. So we have the performance column here, and then we have percentage of completion here. This is information that you would get from your field staff. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, specify certain dollar percentages here, saying that our field staff has provided us that we are complete. So I'm going to say that this one is 25. We're going to say that this one is, 45, and we'll just say this is 100%. So this is going to be a manual step. I am thinking about putting a idea on the community forum to see if this is something Acumatica would want to turn into a processing screen. Um, and once we pull it up, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we filled out the percentage of completion. We have our performance percentage here. Under favorites, I'm going to go ahead and pull up this inquiry. And I'm going to go ahead and update the project to be the one that we're looking at, so our Allen Bakery project here. So what this does is it brings in all my project line items and the actual amounts and revised amounts, but very quick, detailed information, just gives me what I need, gives me what the system thinks we're supposed to be or what we are based off our consumed amount, and then what the percentage of completion actually is. So gives you a chance to compare your actuals versus the system number. And it can give you information like, we may be missing some invoices, right? So if we're 45% complete, where are the costs associated with that? Or it can give you something with like, we're actually only 25% complete, but according to our budget, we've consumed almost 51%, meaning that we're probably not either working fast enough or there was some additional cost with the material. So I really like this screen. It would be really nice if it could keep the history or you could process it on here. So I've been thinking about putting that on the idea forum and keep an eye out. And if you like it, please upvote it. So I'm going to switch back to the deck one last time just to kind of summarize everything and take a look at some of the questions that we have. So some of the key takeaways that we talked about while this PowerPoint is pulling up is the importance of setting up the project budget structure upfront, and taking the time to actually configure that, set it up, will really kind of help you track the project and your costs throughout the life cycle. We also talked about some of the budget control options we had and how that can help you control your costs and monitor changes. We talked about when you can leverage change orders and how to actually update that in the system. And lastly, we kind of talked about the project balances, how to review project balances and performances. Although I didn't show you the dashboards, but if you have additional questions, we can put that on the community portal, and either myself or somebody can get back to you pretty quickly. So we can pause here and go through any of the questions.
Yeah, so we've got a few questions, Iqra. From Sue, if Procore is syncing budget and budget modifications to Acumatica when we lock the budget, will that affect the ability to sync?
I would have to look into the integration with Procore. There may be a few factors associated with that. Is if you're adding new, like adding items or lines on the fly, that could potentially impact that. But that's something that I would say we'd have to look into a little bit more.
Yeah, this is Heidi. I don't think it'll sync if your budget is locked.
Hey, Heidi.
Oh, hey, Heidi.
Hi.
Hey,
Yeah,
okay.
Procore. I don't think Procore can handle the locked budget.
Gotcha. Okay, we've got a question here from Seth. Everything you showed, demoed today, is available in the construction edition of Acumatica, question mark. No customizations or additional modules needed, question mark.
Yes, everything I used outside of that project percent complete inquiry was all native to Acumatica. I didn't make any changes. Although there was one customization that Heidi did tell me about that can help translate some description and unit of measures from other modules so that it translates back to the project properly, but I did not actually publish it. So everything you saw today was directly out of Acumatica, as native as you could get.
Cool. And then one here from Sharanjeet, I might be mispronouncing, apologies. How to open the percent complete? My Acumatica doesn't show it.
Yeah, that is a custom inquiry that I created specifically, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I used the project budget tables and I linked it to project tasks, and I added the specific columns related to the actual amounts and the performance calculation.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's it for questions right now. We have 2 minutes left. If anybody has a question, they can get it in quick.
Yeah, I mean, since it was a pretty straightforward inquiry, I don't know if that's something I can share on the community portal, but if it's helpful, that would be great. Or it'd be great for you. Feel free to, I guess, I download it. Chris, can I attach things like that? I feel
Yeah,
like I should know that given how
you
active
definitely
I am
can.
on the community.
You might have to zip it up, but yes, you can.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll post that either later today or tomorrow. Like I said, it's a super simple inquiry. I'm not that technical. So, if you find a better way, feel free to adjust and, add those things that are relevant for you guys. All right.
Okay, I think that's it for questions, and we're just about at the top of the hour. So,
Yeah.
Iqra, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Just as a reminder, we are recording the session, and it will be posted up on the community site. Usually should be up tomorrow sometime. And other than that, tell everyone, have a great rest of your day, and thank you again, Iqra, for this fantastic presentation.
Appreciate it. Thank you all for attending. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.